Jayoung Yoon. I may be the only person outside Southeast Asian countries, I think. It's been a great forum giving me some energies. I identify myself as a feminist economist, so I present the current states and issues of women's labor movement in the context of South Korea. I have been working on the issue of gender equality both in the labor market and the home from a feminist point of view, and also engaged in teaching women activists about gender and the economy. My another involvement with activism is to closely consult women activist groups by supporting hard and solid evidences on why certain measures and policies and strategies need to be in place to improve women's economic conditions. I'm here to share experiences and lessons about women's labor movement from this vantage point as a feminist economist. Let me start with talking about the current situations of women's achievements and challenges in the labor market and what has been done, because the women labor movements have grown in order to challenge gender discriminations against female workers in the labor market. Then I will talk about current issues and challenges faced by women labor movement. Korea has so far made great efforts to abolish gender discrimination against women in the labor market. In Korea, we could say that there are no explicit forms of legal and policy barriers that obstruct women from pursuing labor market careers. We have tried to adopt whatever measures to pull women out of the home into the labor market. We have a gender equality employment law that has been put in place in 1988. It eliminated the gender discriminations in recruiting, training, advancement, and pay. There is also, we have affirmative action applied to workplaces with 300 employees in order to advance women to the higher positions in the workplaces. And the law was revised, the gender equality employment law was revised in February of 1999 to prohibit the remaining identified forms of gender discrimination and to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace. The law requires firms to conduct employee training sessions every year, just at least one time in every year on sexual harassment. In 2001, it was amended again to include provisions concerning maternity leave and parental leave. And also, the government has extended public expenditures to support child care facilities and services. So you could say that we have everything that promotes women's employment in the labor market. These developments in the laws, policies, and institutions to promote women's equal participation in the labor market have been successful due to the women's labor movement. It is also true that they have been widely pushed forward in the context of gender mainstreaming efforts nationwide, and also in the context of lowest low fertility we have among the world. The democratic governments during the 2000s have recruited and employed professionals and activists with feminist and progressive views and agendas in their offices. And they contributed to making real what was needed to advance women's presence in the public spheres. On the other hand, the government tried to ensure that women keep their careers and have children by putting in place family-friendly policies to counteract the low fertility phenomenon. Therefore, you could say that the achievements have been made possible because the demands from feminist activism coincided with the non-feminist initiatives trying to boost fertility. As you know, the reality is far from what is stated in the law and the policies. There are more subtle ways of excluding women from internal labor market, guaranteeing gender equality throughout the women's lives. First, women workers are unable to benefit from their rights and entitlements guaranteed by the law and the policies. It is because women are overrepresented in the contingent labor force. They are employed as irregular workers, on a short contract, on a part-time basis, as daily workers, and as temporary workers. And sometimes they are not even recognized as workers by the Labor Standards Act. This group of labor force has been standing out after the 1997 financial crisis that all of you know we experienced which brought about a huge change for the women workers. The restructuring process prescribed by IMF resulted in the large-scale layoffs, which devastated the livelihoods of many Korean workers. Since then, women tend to be marginalized in the labor market because women are less likely to be employed as full-time regular workers. They find it difficult to demand their rights to benefits entitled by the law, for fear of being unable to renew their employment contracts. These benefits include, for example, maternity and parental leave and the protection from the sexual harassment. So the implications of women advancing in the labor market in terms of the economic participation for gender equality is therefore rather complex. Women's access to education and labor market opportunities are, of course, great achievements in the women's life. Traditionally, there were Confucian influences that combine women to the family role. But the Confucian influences significantly got non-existent. On the contrary, women feel pressure to engage in the paid employment, however bad jobs available to them. The majority of men prefer women to hold a job because one income earned by men alone is not enough for maintaining family subsistence. The problem is that women still perform most of the housework, intensifying their workload while men hesitate to undertake housework. This is where we are asked to seriously question what the gender justice should be in terms of both men and women's economic activities. Women's participation in the labor market alone no longer contributes to gender equality from a feminist point of view. We have come a long way to secure women's rights to education and employment, but there are more to do to achieve the substantive gender equality. The polarization among women is getting more severe, hampering the coalitions and sisterhood, transcending their class differences. Some women are definitely making big steps as high-ranked positions, but other women suffer from vulnerable working conditions with hopeless prospects. These days, women labor movements tend to advocate these most vulnerable women in the labor market. So now I'm going to talk about how women labor movements have gained their presence to the public as well as in the Korean activism, responding to the changes in these women's positions in the labor market. Women labor movements has a long history from the 1970s when women workers laid the foundation for the modern labor movement by establishing grassroots unions to respond to the military dictatorship. But the transformations in the state-led industrial policies have altered the labor movements, and the South Korean heavy chemical industries replaced the light manufacturing industries. The labor movement shifted from female workers to male workers. Eventually, the grassroots unions established by women workers were replaced by state-affiliated unions, and later the male-centered democratic trade unions, which focused on the organization and the interests of workers in large enterprises, mostly male workers. The mainstream trade unions, dominated by male leadership, did not provide adequate protection for women workers during the financial crisis in 1997 and further marginalized women workers' interests. Mainstream unions became formalized as economic unions and less likely to concern themselves with broader social issues, including the democracy, equality, and justice. As a result of mainstream unions focusing on large firms, workers at large firms, predominantly men, obtained a substantially higher wage increase than those working in small factories, who were mostly women. Under the male-centered labor movements, women workers as union members have been less and less organized. By continuing to position men as their leaders, the trade unions marginalized women's issues in the workplace. In 1999, women comprised 30% of the membership in the male-centered trade union, but out of its 700 leaders, only 30 were women. Since the leaders neglected to represent women's concerns, the proportion of women in unions declined from 11.1% in 1987 to 5.6% in 1997. The inadequacy of the mainstream trade unions to meet women's particular needs and alleviate their sufferings spurred women's trade unions. women's only trade unions to be formed in 1999. It is just women only community union, I would say. The Korean women's trade unions have been actively working to represent women workers who could not be part of the existing mainstream male-centered trade union. It was open to every woman workers for membership. The members are able to get the union's support for bargaining with their employers or for collectively finding out solutions. They have started with 400 members in 1999 to grow at 6,000 at the present. The members include workers at small businesses, contingent women workers, workers working in subcontract companies, and special employment. You may not be familiar with this last category of the workers, special employment. It is a new type of employment developed in the recent years. They work as if they were self-employed, like employers, determining when and where to work and how much to work. The governments and conservatives label them as special employment, disguised self-employed, something between self-employed and workers. For that reason, they have no recognition as workers under the Labor Standards Act. So being denied the right as workers, including forming or being part of the existing trade unions and access to social insurances. But they are in effect subcontracted as employees, not employers. They include golf caddies, home-based visiting teachers, and home care workers who are predominantly women. The Korean women's trade unions' success have been mostly small scale, but women's trade unions are meaningful in helping to change Korean society's views and treatment of women workers being marginalized in the neoliberal labor market. Let me share with you a couple of the exemplary women workers' issues the Korean women's trade unions has tackled. It has fought for the legal rights of workers in special employment. Just as I introduced to you, they established the 88 Country Club, Golf Caddy Club, chapter and carried out the fight to protect the legal rights of golf caddies. The trade union demanded that they needed to have the rights to access to industrial disaster compensation insurance so that they can benefit from it when they are hurt on the job. It has also successfully organized subcontracted workers, cleaning workers in the universities and hospitals. Before they were organized, they were just fired when the contract companies were not able to renew contracts with the universities and hospitals. The organized cleaning workers demanded that they could continue to work, that is, a stable job, even when the contract companies stopped working for the universities and hospitals, and they got it. The Korean women's trade unions are currently working on the issue of irregular workers in the public educational system. The fight of irregular school workers, among whom more than 90% are women, is being placed a great deal. The cook and librarians employed at schools as contingent workers are treated differently from those who are employed by the government, even when they perform the same tasks. So they are demanding the fair treatment for the school workers. And they are now planning a big strike, which is coming 26th of this month. Besides fighting for specific demands coming out of the specific groups of women workers, it was also the first labor organization to raise the problem of the minimum wage system. The level of minimum wage is too low, not catching up with the inflation and costs of subsistence. In a situation that many women workers receive less than or just above the minimum wage level, the minimum wage concerned women more than men. Besides the Women's Workers Union, the Korean Women Workers Association is the organization that plays a substantial role in trying to organize members and put forward concerns pertaining to women workers. Over the last 25 years, it has worked directly with unemployed workers, contingent workers, female heads of households, and working poor women, building a solid base for the women labor movement. One of its main activities includes the job creation for low-income and unemployed workers, unemployed women. In 2003, it formed a planning committee to promote social enterprise for low-income women. The idea was to turn the unorganized middle-aged and senior women domestic workers dispatch program into a social enterprise for low-income women. Because the majority of middle-aged and senior women face increasing difficulty in finding jobs, it found that creating jobs for them is something urgent for them. Now that they create a domestic work for the women, and they the association realized that these women are not recognized as workers under the Labor Standard Act simply because they work at home, providing services to families for their consumption, not businesses for profit. So responding to this unjust treatment of women workers in the informal sector in the system of the Labor Standards Act, they organized the National Domestic Workers Cooperative in 2004. The National Domestic Workers Cooperative is leading a movement to pass the bill that domestic workers should be recognized as workers with the same rights to social insurances and trade unions as those in the traditional industries. 85% of domestic workers are Korean women. So we have a slightly different issue regarding domestic workers from unlike the Malaysia case. The movement is gaining a political momentum, particularly due to the International Convention on Domestic Workers. In the Congress this year, not only activists but also progressive congresswomen with the background of feminists and labor activism are mobilizing all the resources to get the bill passed. Women labor movement in South Korea is still making progress to advocate those in the most vulnerable working conditions. They mostly target women, but the resulting fruits from their fights don't exclude men in the same positions. The mainstream trade unions failed to address the issue of these contingent men workers. Let me conclude with my concern with women labor movement. One of the biggest challenges, this is just one of, from my perspective, one of the biggest challenges is that activists are getting older. They are from my generation, like me. I'm 43 years old. The pool of activists is not being replenished. In fact, young people are less and less dedicated to pursue activism in Korea. The most of the fights being carried on has been concentrated on women workers in their late 40s and beyond. They find it very hard to organize women workers in their 20s and 30s, holding like office and service jobs in small to medium-sized businesses. So in order for us to carry on the legacy of women labor movements, motivating and educating women workers to be involved in feminist and labor movement will be the big task in the future. Thanks for listening.